The sound of metal echoed across the cramped garage as Ethan Miller wiped the grease from his hands, unaware that his entire life was about to collapse in front of a crowd. One missing envelope, cash that was never in his toolbox, would brand him a thief, strip him of his job, and threaten the only thing that mattered, keeping his little sister alive. In that moment, with whispers spreading like wildfire and shame burning hotter than the engines around him, Ethan had two choices: surrender to the lie or fight to prove the truth in a town that had already judged him guilty. What he didn't know was that someone unexpected, an outsider with power, eyes sharp enough to see what others ignored, was watching, and her choice to step forward would change both of their lives forever. The morning sun slid through the high windows of Davenport Auto, painting long bars of light across the concrete floor. Dust drifted through the air, catching the glow like faint smoke. Ethan Miller stood under the hood of a silver SUV, his shoulders squared, hands steady, but his thoughts already heavy. He had been at the shop since dawn, as always. Routine was survival for him. Show up early, work hard, avoid mistakes. Mistakes cost money, and money meant his sister's insulin. The SUV's owner, a man in a tailored suit with slicked-back hair, tapped his shiny watch as if Ethan was keeping him hostage. Cole Davenport. The name alone was enough to tense the room. He wasn't just another customer. He owned half the new condos sprouting around town and had friends in every corner of City Hall. People said Cole didn't buy cars, he collected trophies. And today, his trophy had a complaint in the engine. Ethan tightened the last bolt and closed the hood with quiet finality. "All set, Mr. Davenport. Should run smoother now," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Cole barely looked at him. "About time," he muttered. He pulled a thick envelope from his inner pocket and slipped it into his briefcase before turning to sign the work order. The gesture was small, quick, almost invisible, but Madison Clark, who had just stepped into the shop's waiting area unnoticed, caught it. Her eyes, trained to read body language in high-stakes boardrooms, filed it away without yet knowing why. Ethan nodded politely, even offered a faint smile. But his stomach tightened when Cole's words cut the air. "Funny thing," Cole said louder, turning toward the front desk where other customers sat waiting. "I had an envelope of cash in my briefcase yesterday, $5,000. Now it's gone, and the last person near it—" His eyes slid to Ethan. "Was you." The shop fell silent. Every tool, every hum of machinery seemed to stop. Ethan's throat dried instantly. "That's not true," he said firmly, though his voice carried more shock than anger. Cole raised a brow, savoring the moment. "Check his locker. I bet you'll find it." The manager, nervous and eager to please a man like Cole, motioned for Ethan to open his locker. Ethan's hands shook as he turned the combination, the cold metal biting into his skin. When the door swung open, his breath caught. An envelope sat on the top shelf, one he had never seen before. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan's heart hammered. "That's not mine," he said, voice raw. "I didn't—" But the words died against the tide of whispers. The accusation stuck harder than truth ever could. Madison, still in the waiting area, leaned forward, her sharp eyes narrowing. Something was off. She'd seen Cole palm that envelope moments earlier. But she stayed quiet, just observing, as Ethan was stripped of his dignity in front of everyone. The manager's face tightened. "Ethan, I'm sorry. You know what this looks like." Ethan's jaw locked. Years of sweat, trust, and spotless reputation crumbled in seconds. His mind flashed to his sister, Lily, waiting outside in the car with her cooler full of insulin pens. Rent overdue. Bills stacked on the kitchen table. This job was more than a paycheck. It was the thread holding their lives together. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough for Ethan to hear. "You'll never prove it wasn't you. Best walk away quietly." The words pierced deeper than the accusation itself. It wasn't just about money, it was about power. Cole wanted him small, broken, silenced. Ethan walked out of the shop that day with his toolbox in one hand and shame in the other. The hot Ohio air slapped his face as he stepped outside. He spotted Lily in the passenger seat of his rusted pickup, earbuds in, humming faintly. She looked up, her smile ready, until she saw his expression. "What happened?" she asked, pulling the buds out. Ethan forced a half smile. "Nothing we can't handle." But his eyes betrayed him, and Madison, slipping out a few steps behind, noticed. She didn't approach yet. Not here, not now. But she knew injustice when she saw it, and something about Ethan's quiet resolve pulled at her. For Ethan, the day ended like any other, except his world had collapsed. He drove home with Lily beside him, staring at the road as if sheer focus could keep the pieces of his life from scattering. The only sound was the faint rattle of the truck's old engine and Lily's soft breathing. That night, as he stacked unpaid bills under the dim kitchen light, Ethan didn't know he had already been marked. Not just by the lie, but by the stranger who had witnessed it, a stranger who wasn't going to stay silent. The hum of Ethan's old pickup echoed down the narrow streets of Lorain, Ohio. Houses with peeling paint lined the block, porches sagging under years of neglect. His truck coughed at every stop sign, as if mocking his silence. Lily sat next to him, knees pulled to her chest, backpack wedged between her sneakers. She watched her brother's clenched jaw, and the way his hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "You're not gonna tell me?" she finally asked, breaking the quiet. Her voice was soft, careful, but full of worry. Ethan forced his eyes on the road. "It's complicated," he muttered. "You lost your job, didn't you?" she pressed. The words hit harder than he expected. He glanced at her quickly, hazel eyes too wise for 16. "How'd you know?" She gave a sad smile. "You've got the same face you had when Mom got sick. That face that says everything's falling apart, but you're pretending it isn't." Ethan's throat tightened. He reached over and ruffled her hair, trying to lighten the weight. "Guess I need to work on my poker face." But Lily wasn't fooled. She shifted in her seat, hugging her knees tighter. "What are we going to do, Ethan? Insulin's not optional, and school's already breathing down my neck for missing days." He pulled the truck into their driveway, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The small two-bedroom house sat tired and stubborn, just like its owner. The porch light flickered when he unlocked the door. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of motor oil, a permanent souvenir of Ethan's hands. Bills sat in a neat stack on the table, envelopes unopened, numbers waiting like vultures. Ethan dropped his toolbox by the door and sat down heavily. He rubbed his temples, staring at the pile. Rent overdue, utilities past due, pharmacy bill in red ink. Lily set her backpack down and leaned against the counter. "You always say we'll figure it out, but this time—" She trailed off, her voice cracking. Ethan looked up at her, swallowing the knot in his throat. "This time's no different. I'll find work. People know me in this town." But even as he said it, he heard Cole's voice echoing, "You'll never prove it wasn't you." Rumors spread fast in a place like Lorain. A single stain could become a permanent mark. Lily moved to sit across from him, her hands flat on the table. "Don't lie to me. You can't fix this with just another job. They took your name, Ethan. Without that, nobody cares how many engines you saved." He didn't respond. He couldn't. The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence. After a while, Ethan stood, grabbed a wrench from his box, and started fiddling with it. The sound of metal against metal grounded him, gave him something solid. "Go do your homework," he said gently. Lily hesitated, then nodded and went to her room. The door closed softly behind her. Ethan stayed at the table, twisting the wrench in his hands like it could turn back time. His thoughts swirled. The look on Cole's face, the whispers from the waiting area, the manager's disappointed eyes. Shame clung to him like grease he couldn't wash off. Hours passed before he finally dragged himself to bed. Sleep came late and shallow, broken by the sound of Lily coughing in the next room. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of burnt toast. Lily stood at the stove, messy ponytail, oversized hoodie, trying to make breakfast with more determination than skill. The toast was black on one side, pale on the other. She glanced at him sheepishly. "Don't say a word," she warned, sliding a plate toward him. He smiled despite himself. "Looks crunchy." "It's edible. Barely." She sat down with her own plate, pushing a syringe cap out of the way. The sight of it pulled Ethan's chest tight again. After breakfast, he drove her to school. She hopped out with a quick wave, but not before leaning in through the window. "Promise me you won't give up, Ethan." "I promise," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. At the same time, across town, Madison Clark sat in a corner booth of a small cafe, laptop open, coffee cooling beside her. She had flown into Lorraine for a weekend family visit, but last night's scene at the garage replayed in her mind like a broken record. She knew what she saw: Cole Davenport slipping that envelope, his arrogance, the smug confidence that nobody would question him. It all burned in her gut. Madison was no stranger to men like Cole. In Chicago's boardrooms, she had seen reputations shredded for sport. She had survived it once herself, accused of a deal gone wrong that she never touched. It had nearly cost her career. She tapped her pen against her notebook, staring at the screen. She didn't know Ethan Miller beyond his name on the work order, but she knew injustice when she saw it. And something about the look on his face, the mixture of anger, shame, and quiet strength, stuck with her. "Excuse me, ma'am," the waitress interrupted. "Need a refill?" Madison blinked out of her thoughts and nodded. "Yes, please. Extra strong." As the waitress poured, Madison scribbled 3 words in the margin of her notebook: "Don't let it go." She wasn't sure yet what she was going to do. But one thing was certain: Ethan Miller's story wasn't over. By late afternoon, the lake wind picked up and shoved grey water against the rocks like it was trying to climb ashore. Ethan sat in his truck outside the temp agency, staring at a clipboard that might as well have been blank. The woman at the desk had smiled the way people do when they're sorry, but not helpful. "We'll call if anything opens." Translation: "Not with that rumor trailing you." His phone buzzed with a pharmacy reminder. Insulin pickup. He checked his balance, did the math twice, and drove. The pharmacy lights were too bright, the kind that made you feel inspected. Lily stood at the counter already, hoodie sleeves pushed up, cheeks pale in a way he recognized and hated. The clerk slid a white paper bag across the counter and quoted a number that made Ethan's stomach fold. He pulled out his card, hesitated, swiped, declined. "Run it again," he said, throat tight. The clerk did, eyes softening. Declined. Lily's hands trembled. "It's fine. I have a pen left," she lied. Ethan looked at her, at the fear buried under her bravado. "We'll figure it out," he said, and turned to ask about partial fills, discount programs, anything. The clerk tried, typing, pausing, apologizing. Behind them, a woman's voice. "I'll cover it." They turned. Madison Clark, hair pulled into a clean knot, business casual in a town that preferred denim, stood with a card in hand. No drama, no pity. Just a simple offer, like it wasn't proof that worlds could collide and make something gentler. Ethan stiffened. "No, Thanks. But no." Madison didn't move her hand. "You can pay me back tomorrow. Or never. But she needs this today." She looked at Lily, not at him. "You okay?" Lily nodded too quickly. Humiliation flushed Ethan's face. It felt like being 15 and poor again, except this was worse because he was supposed to be the adult now. He opened his mouth to refuse a second time and caught the flicker at the edge of Lily's vision. Shallow breath, slight sway. He swallowed pride like a nail. "Thank you," he said. Madison paid, the bag slid back, and the moment passed without witnesses cheering or the earth splitting open. Just 3 people at a counter, making it through another Thursday. Outside, the wind cut through the parking lot. Lily climbed into the truck, hugging the bag to her chest, and pulled the door shut. Ethan and Madison stood on the curb, both searching for words that didn't exist. "You followed me?" he asked, not angry, just tired. Madison shook her head. "No, small town. Only one pharmacy open after 5, a beat. And I was looking for you." He eyed her. "Why?" "I watched what happened at the shop," she said. "I don't think you took anything." He felt the relief, like a heat he didn't trust. "Doesn't matter what you or I think. It matters if I can prove it." She glanced toward the truck, lowered her voice. "There are ceiling domes over the service bays, not dummies. I asked the manager. He said they've been recording since the remodel." Ethan's face changed by degrees, hope and dread wrestling. "They'll never hand that over." "I don't need them to," she said. "I know who installed the system." She showed him her phone, an email open with a company logo and a name. "They back up to a cloud. I already sent a lawful access request," she smirked. "Boardroom trick, long story." Ethan stared at her, then at the lake, where gulls traced ragged circles over the water. "Why do you care?" Madison tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because I've been where you're standing. Different details. Same stain." She took a breath. "And because people like Cole Davenport bank on the rest of us being scared or tired or too busy to push back." A gull screeched overhead like a hinge. Ethan's jaw worked. He glanced at the truck. Lily watched them through the glass, pretending not to. "What happens if you're wrong?" he asked. "Then I bought a kid her medicine and annoyed a developer," Madison said. "I'll live." He almost smiled. "Almost? Okay, if you find something." "You'll be the first to know," she said. "Tonight, if I can." They exchanged numbers. She left, walking with a pace that suggested she had a plan and a clock ticking in her ear. Ethan climbed into the truck and rested his forehead on the steering wheel for a second. Lily nudged his arm. "She seems nice," Lily said. "She seems dangerous," he answered, and she grinned despite herself. Madison spent the next 2 hours in a cramped backroom of a strip mall IT shop, shoulder to shoulder with a tech named Drew, who ate sunflower seeds and typed like he was fighting the keyboard. The footage trickled in. Timestamp overlays, grainy angles, soundless bodies moving through rectangles of light. At 7:13 p.m., the night before the theft, Cole stood by his SUV, laughing with a man off camera, an envelope visible as he waved his hands. At 8:06 a.m., the next morning, Cole arrived at the garage, envelope tucked away. At 10:17, he walked to Ethan's bay, leaned on the fender, gestured left. At 10:28, the feed glitched, 5 minutes gone. At 10:33, the envelope turned up somewhere it didn't belong. Drew whistled. "That's cute." "Cute?" Madison said, dry. "Tip to the city inspector, you get your occupancy permit faster. Tip to the camera vendor, you get 5 minutes of static," he said. He scrolled, found backup caches, shook his head. Whoever did it knew where the mirrored buffer lived. "Can you restore anything?" Madison asked. "Not the missing 5 minutes, but—" He leaned forward, scrubbed frame by frame, then froze. Cole's forearm, briefcase open. A telltale angle of paper. The envelope back in view before the gap. That's something. Madison took a still image, saved a clip, sent it to herself, and then to a second account because she'd learned redundancy the hard way. She stood, bones buzzing. "I owe you." "You do," Drew said, cheerful, "and so does whoever gets their name back." She called Ethan and asked him to meet at the pier. He arrived fast, Lily with him again, needle kit tucked away like a secret. Madison showed him the clip on her phone. Ethan watched twice, expression cut from stone, then exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for a week. "It's not everything," Madison said, "but it cracks the story. Enough to open doors." "Which doors?" he asked. "Bank, press, maybe a judge." She hesitated. "And maybe a different door entirely." He waited. "I run a fund in Chicago," she said. "We invest in things that actually make life better. Rare, I know. I've been sitting on an idea for a pilot. A modern repair hub with apprenticeships, living wages, tool ownership, childcare corner, transparent pricing, fleet maintenance contracts instead of chasing random walk-ins. We put it in a place that needs it." She looked past him at the warehouses along the road. "Like this place?" Ethan blinked. "You're talking about a garage. I'm talking about you running one." She didn't soften it with a smile. "I'll put up the money and the political cover. You lead it. Hire who the town forgot. Prove that dignity isn't a luxury accessory." He laughed once, no humor. "I fix things. I'm not a GM. Then we teach you," she said. "I'll mentor you. You already have the hard part." "What's that?" "People trust your hands." Ethan looked at Lily. She was pretending to text, failing, listening to every word. Wind lifted the edge of a storm out on the lake. Distant thunder rolled like someone moving furniture upstairs. He weighed pride against need, fear against the shame of doing nothing. He thought of Cole's smirk, of the manager's shrug, of the envelope blooming like a bruise in his locker. He thought of the kids hanging out behind the bodega down the block, hands bored, futures undecided. He rubbed his face. "What's the catch?" "Only the obvious ones," Madison said. "It'll be hard. People will try to kill it. My own board might. We'll need to be clean and loud at the same time." She paused. "But we get to build the place we wish hired us at 19. Silence stretched, taut as a belt. Lily cleared her throat. "Ethan," she said softly, "this sounds like the part where in movies the guy says no and regrets it for the next hour." He smiled at her, helpless, then looked at Madison. A gull skimmed the water, rose, wheeled away. He stuck out his hand. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." Madison gripped it. No fanfare, no music swell, just a deal made on a cold pier with the lake trying to climb into town. Behind them, the horizon went darker. Ahead of them, permits, budgets, enemies, payrolls. He'd stepped off the ledge of the life he knew, and there was no way back. "Door of no return," Madison murmured, half to herself. "Say what?" Ethan asked. "Nothing," she said, smiling now. "Let's go build a garage." The warehouse smelled of dust and rusted steel beams, like the ghosts of 100 shifts still clinging to the air. Sunlight leaked through broken skylights, cutting pale stripes across the cracked concrete floor. Ethan stood in the center, boots echoing with every step, trying to picture engines instead of emptiness. It felt impossible, like imagining a bonfire from a pile of wet wood. Madison walked beside him, blazer swapped for a grey hoodie. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried a folder under one arm, thick with printouts. She didn't see rust and cobwebs. She saw diagrams, timelines, investment numbers. Her eyes had that sharp brightness again, the kind that caught details others ignored. "So," she said, "what do you see?" Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Honestly, a death trap. Roof leaks, wirings shot, floors cracked. You want me to turn this into a shop?" Her smile tilted. "No, I want us to turn it into a shop, and not just a shop, something this town hasn't seen in years. Clean, fair, reliable, a place people trust." He looked around again. His father used to say garages weren't just about cars, they were about stories. People left a piece of their lives in your hands when they dropped off a vehicle. But standing in this cavern of decay, Ethan struggled to see stories. Only ruins. "Roof first," he muttered. "Can't fix cars if the rain's pouring on 'em." Exactly. Madison opened her folder, showing a rough schedule. Roof wiring permits. Apprenticeship applications go live after we sign the lease. I already have 2 fleet owners in Cleveland willing to pilot contracts if we're up in 3 months. Ethan blinked. 3 months? Her grin widened. You thought I came here for a slow hobby? He chuckled despite the weight pressing on him. Guess not. The first week was demolition. Ethan recruited 2 friends who owed him favors. Rick, a lanky tow truck driver with more tattoos than patience, and Jamal, a quiet neighbor who had just been laid off from the mill. Together they tore out rotten drywall, swept piles of debris, and patched what they could. Every evening Ethan dragged home sore, hands blistered, mind buzzing with numbers. At the dinner table, Lily listened while poking at her pasta. "So this Madison lady," she asked one night, "she's your boss now?" Ethan shook his head. "Partner. Big difference." "She bossy?" Lily pressed. He thought about it. "She's determined, smart, talks fast, knows things I don't." Lily smirked. "Sounds like a boss." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. But later that night, staring at the ceiling, he admitted to himself he did feel like a placeholder in someone else's plan. What if Madison realized he wasn't cut out to run anything? What if he failed her, the crew, Lily? Meanwhile, Cole Davenport hadn't gone quiet. At City Hall, he leaned against polished counters, whispering in the ears of council members. At a Chamber of Commerce luncheon, he dropped subtle warnings about unlicensed operations and safety concerns. Soon, Ethan noticed strange patterns, suppliers who didn't return calls, banks that suddenly grew cold. One afternoon, Ethan found a notice taped to the warehouse door, pending zoning review, work suspended until cleared. His stomach dropped. Inside, Madison read it over his shoulder, calm as stone. "Zoning review, huh? Classic move. They're hoping delays bleed us dry." Ethan's hands balled into fists. "We can't afford delays," she nodded, "which is why we fight smarter. I've got a council meeting tomorrow. You'll come. Let them hear from you, not just me." He hesitated. "I'm no speaker." "You don't have to be. Just tell them the truth. That's louder than anything Cole throws around." That night, he practiced in front of the bathroom mirror while Lily brushed her teeth. "My name's Ethan Miller, and I've lived here all my life." "You sound like a politician," she teased, foam at the corner of her mouth. He sighed. "Well, what do I sound like then?" "Like you," she said simply. "Tell them what you told me. That people deserve a place that doesn't treat them like numbers. That you want to build something real here." Her words stuck. Sometimes Lily had more wisdom than he did. The council meeting buzzed with fluorescent lights and murmurs from a packed room. Ethan sat stiff in the second row, sweat prickling his collar. Cole was there too, smug in his tailored suit, whispering to a reporter with a shiny badge. Madison placed a hand briefly on Ethan's arm before standing to speak. Her words were crisp, professional, polished. Too polished, Ethan thought. People nodded, but the distance was there. Then Madison called him up. Ethan walked slowly to the microphone. His throat tightened. He looked at the council, at the familiar faces of neighbors and old teachers. He could see Cole smirking in the back. His palms were wet, his heart pounding. He thought of Lily's voice. "Tell them what you told me." He cleared his throat. "Look, I'm no speaker. I'm a mechanic. I've fixed engines since I was 12, when I had to keep my dad's old Chevy alive just to get us to school. I'm not here asking for favors. I'm asking for a chance to prove this town deserves better." Murmurs rippled through the room. "I was fired for something I didn't do. Some of you probably heard the rumors. Maybe some of you believed them. But my sister's sitting right there. She knows I don't quit when something's broken. Not a truck, not a shop, not this town." The room fell quieter. "I want to hire the kids hanging out with nothing to do. I want to train them, give them real paychecks, tools they can take home. I want moms and dads to drop off a car without worrying they're being cheated. That's it. That's my pitch." When he stepped back, his legs trembled. He thought he had stumbled through it, but Madison's eyes gleamed with pride. And behind them, for the first time, Cole's smirk faltered. Back at the warehouse that night, the crew sat on overturned buckets eating cheap pizza. The zoning notice wasn't gone, the fight wasn't over. But for the first time since losing his job, Ethan felt like he was steering the wheel again, not just being dragged. He looked at Madison, grease on his forearms, exhaustion in his bones, and asked quietly, "You really think we can pull this off?" She lifted her slice, grinning. "I don't think, Ethan. I know." For the first time, he almost believed her. The warehouse hummed with half-finished wiring, loose boards, and the echo of too many voices working at once. The smell of paint clung to the air, sharp enough to sting the nose. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, barking instructions, juggling phone calls, and tightening bolts, as if his life depended on it. Maybe it did. Rick waved from a ladder. "We're short 2 panels for the east wall. Supplier says our credit's been flagged." Ethan cursed under his breath. "Flagged? We paid last week." Rick shrugged. "Guess somebody made a call." Ethan knew who. Cole Davenport's shadow stretched into every corner of Lorraine, and lately that shadow had been darker than ever. Madison walked in, phone glued to her ear. She motioned Ethan over, ending the call with clipped words. "Bad news. Banks pulling the equipment loan. They cited reputational risk." Ethan's chest tightened. "Reputational risk means Davenport." "Exactly," she said. The room buzzed with drills, laughter, and footsteps, but for Ethan, the noise blurred into a single thought. "We're drowning." That night, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, bills spread like storm clouds across the wood. He hadn't even noticed Lily walk in until she set down her math homework next to the overdue electric bill. "You forgot dinner," she said softly. He looked up, guilt spreading across his face. "Sorry, Lil. Long day." She tried to smile, but her hands shook as she gathered the papers. Ethan froze. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said too quickly, but her skin was pale, her lips dry. Then the tremor in her hands grew worse, and her knees buckled. "Lily!" He caught her just as she collapsed, the syringe kit sliding from her hoodie pocket. Panic clawed at his throat. He grabbed the glucagon pen, injected her, praying under his breath until her breathing steadied. Her eyes fluttered open. "I told you, I'm fine," she whispered weakly. Ethan sat on the floor with her, shaking harder than she was. "Don't you ever scare me like that again." Tears slipped down his face. For the first time since the firing, he let himself break. The next morning, Madison found him at the warehouse. His eyes were bloodshot, voice raw. "I can't do this. I'm failing her, failing this place. Maybe Davenport's right. I don't belong here." Madison studied him for a long moment. Then she leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "You think you're the first person he's tried to bury. You're not." Ethan looked at her, anger simmering. "Easy for you to say. You've got money, connections. I've got bills and a sister who—" His voice cracked. Madison didn't flinch. "You think I don't know what it feels like? When I was 27, I got accused of leaking trade secrets. I lost clients, friends, investors. I couldn't walk into a room without people whispering. For a year, I thought my career was over. And the guy who set me up, he's still out there, rich as ever." Her voice softened. "But I survived, because someone finally believed me. And I swore, if I ever saw someone else go through it, I'd stand with them. That's why I'm here." Ethan's shoulders sagged. The silence between them was heavy, filled with machines half-assembled and dreams half-built. "You think I'm some polished VC who doesn't get it?" Madison said. "But I've been exactly where you are, on the floor, certain it's all over." She stepped closer. "And here's the truth. You don't quit in the middle of the fight. You quit and you prove Davenport right." Ethan rubbed his face, torn between exhaustion and the spark she was trying to light. "And if I'm not enough?" Madison's eyes held his. "Then lean on me until you are." Days blurred into nights. Ethan pushed harder than ever, but doubts gnawed at him. Every cancelled order, every suspicious glance from a neighbor felt like another nail in the coffin. Yet somehow, Madison's words echoed louder than his fear. "Don't quit in the middle of the fight." Jamal caught him one evening staring at the half-finished garage, shoulders slumped. "Man, you know engines," Jamal said quietly. "Engines need pressure to run. No compression, no power. Maybe life's the same." Ethan cracked a tired grin. "That your way of telling me to suck it up?" "Pretty much," Jamal said, smiling. The breaking point came when a letter arrived from City Hall. Work suspended. Code violation reported. Ethan nearly tore it in half. Another stall tactic. He wanted to punch through drywall, scream into the night. Instead, he walked outside, sat on the curb, and buried his face in his hands. Madison sat beside him. "We'll fight this too." He shook his head. "What if there's nothing left to fight with?" She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Then we build from scraps. That's what mechanics do, right?" For the first time in days, Ethan laughed. Short, rough, but real. "Yeah," he said, "that's exactly what we do." Back at home, Lily lay curled on the couch, blanket around her shoulders. She gave him a weak smile when he came in. "You didn't quit today, did you?" He sat beside her, tucking the blanket tighter. "Not today." Her eyes closed and she whispered, "Good, because I need you to keep fighting." Ethan stayed there until her breathing steadied. His doubts didn't vanish, but something shifted. If Lily believed in him and Madison refused to let go, maybe, just maybe, he wasn't finished yet. The morning of the grand opening smelled like gasoline and fresh paint. The old warehouse no longer echoed with rust and broken beams. Instead, banners hung across the entrance, blue and white with bold letters, "The Last Chance Garage." A line of cars snaked down the block, people waiting, curious, hopeful. Some came for repairs, some for work, and some just to see if Ethan Miller had truly risen from the ashes of humiliation. Ethan stood inside, adjusting his collared shirt, hands trembling despite the grease still under his nails. He caught his reflection in the glass door. Same tired eyes, same worn face, but something was different. He looked steady. Behind him, Jamal and Rick joked while tightening the last bolt on a lift, and a group of teenagers hovered nervously near the apprentice station. Lily, healthier and bright-eyed, stacked pamphlets on the front desk, a proud smirk playing on her lips. "You good?" Madison asked, stepping up beside him, clipboard in hand. She was calm as ever, but her eyes sparkled with a quiet fire. Ethan exhaled. "As good as I'll ever be." Madison grinned. "Then let's show them what second chances look like." The mayor arrived first, reporters trailing, cameras flashing. Then, almost on cue, Cole Davenport appeared in a sleek black sedan, his presence slicing through the crowd. He stepped out in a tailored suit, smile plastered on his face like armor. "Congratulations, Ethan," Cole said loudly, shaking his hand for the cameras. "Great to see hard-working locals building something. That's the spirit of Lorraine." The crowd clapped politely, but whispers stirred. Madison folded her arms, watching. Ethan held Cole's hand a beat longer than necessary, his voice steady. "We fix what's broken here," Ethan said evenly, "if you're ready to pay for the parts." The words struck like a hammer. Cole's smile twitched, but he let go, stepping back as the cameras clicked furiously. Inside, the ribbon was cut, and the garage came alive. Engines roared on lifts, apprentices rolled carts across the floor, customers filled waiting chairs. Madison gave a short speech about community investment, but when she offered the mic to Ethan, the room hushed. He hesitated, scanning the faces. Neighbors who had once whispered thief, officials who had once looked away, kids who needed someone to believe in them. His throat tightened, but then Lily caught his eye, mouthing the words, Just be you. Ethan cleared his throat. A year ago, I walked out of a shop with nothing but a toolbox and shame. People said my name like it was a warning. They said I was done. But here's the thing. Engines only run with compression, pressure. You put them under heat, stress, resistance, and that's when they find power. Maybe people are the same. Maybe pressure is what makes us go. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. He continued, voice stronger. This place isn't about me. It's about second chances. For kids who've been told they're nothing. For families tired of being cheated. For anyone who thinks their story's over. Here, we fix what's broken, and not just cars. The room erupted in applause. Lily wiped her eyes. Madison clapped the hardest. Later that afternoon, as sunlight poured through the high windows, Ethan walked the shop floor. Apprentices laughed while learning to change oil. Rick showed a customer how to check brake pads. Jamal scribbled notes on an order board. Madison typed furiously on her laptop, already negotiating the next fleet contract. Ethan paused, taking it all in. The sound of impact wrenches, the smell of oil, the hum of voices. It was music. His chest swelled with something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. He walked to the front desk and taped a small, hand-painted sign to the wall. Letters uneven, brushstrokes crooked, but the message clear. Integrity is our warranty. That evening, as the crowd thinned and the garage lights dimmed, Ethan stood outside with Madison and Lily. The lake breeze carried the scent of summer rain, cool and sharp. Madison nudged him. You know this is just the beginning, right? He smiled. Yeah, but for the first time, I'm ready for it. Lily leaned against his arm, yawning. Told you not to quit. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Guess you were right. Cole drove past once more, his car slowing as if he wanted the last word. But the sight he caught, a lit-up garage full of life, laughter, and engines roaring, was louder than anything he could say. His car sped off into the night, swallowed by silence. In the weeks that followed, the Last Chance garage became more than a repair shop. It was a hub. Parents dropped off cars and picked up trust. Teenagers traded street corners for tool benches. Paychecks turned into groceries, rent, and dignity. And Ethan, the man once branded a thief, stood at the center, not as a victim, but as a builder. Proof that second chances weren't charity, they were infrastructure. As he locked up one evening, Lily called from the office. Hey, don't forget your sign. Ethan turned, smiling at the crooked words glowing under the shop light. Integrity is our warranty. He flipped the switch, plunging the garage into the night. But inside him, a fire burned brighter than ever. If Ethan's story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove resilience can change everything.